dating back to the 1990s, which focused on patrolling stations and trains in the late evenings and overnight hours when crime is at its worst. NYPD Transit Chief Jason Wilcox.
Focused enforcement is an integral part of our effort to fight crime in the subway system. This year we are up in multiple arrest categories, up 67% in overall arrests so far, increases of 44% in felony arrests and up 72% in misdemeanor arrests. We are up in robbery arrests, up in assault felony arrests, up in misdemeanor assault arrests.
Mayor Eric Adams was an NYPD transit cop when the TPF was first around. The unit will perform dedicated and targeted patrols. But again, the update to this story, we are hearing now that the suspect, Andrew Abdullah, is now in police custody. It had been broken earlier today, we reported, by a pastor who was negotiating with police to bring him in or to have him to surrender. The details of how he was brought in or if he surrendered or if they went to get him, we are still working on that. Since then, when past reporters working the investigation, and we expect to hear more details later. So a big gang bust today up in the Bronx. Nearly 3 dozen alleged members of the RPT organization are charged in connection with a number of incidents with assault, weapons possession, conspiracy to commit murder. Authorities say the suspects were involved with, among other incidents, several shootings in and around the River Park Towers complex and the Hybrid section of the Bronx. It looks like New York City taking another shot at hosting the Democratic National Convention. You hear about this?
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back.
Analyzing the city's application now ahead of the submission deadline this Friday. So outside the Democratic Convention held here in the Big Apple 30 years ago. The party nominated Bill Clinton for first time to victory. Political consultant
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. On to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. Wee, wee, wee.
Americans are starting to wonder if their expensive college degrees were worth it. With 56% of adults under the age of 30 who went to college say the benefits of their education exceeded the cost. According to the latest Federal study of household finances, America's 82% of former college attendees age 60 and older will have the benefit of a longer career and having likely paid
on to the next one, on to the next one.
A lot of changes going on in the U.S. housing market. Sales of new U.S. homes plummeted last month by the most in nearly 9 years. Ended by the combination of high prices and a steep climb in mortgage rates. Purchases of new single-family homes fell almost 17%, 9 times the forecast. Home builder shares tumbling.
1738. Right.
Stock index is down, now losing 41. Nasdaq falling 300. S&P 500 down 34. Ubers and West is 46% down. I'm Angelo Dick. Then turn right now. This message on Transport Friday news never left your hands. Get there. The reliable, smart, safe weight selection. What's inside 327? I'm here with Dr. Glenn Benjamin, the Medical Director of Chemotherapy at the John Theurer Cancer Center at Hackensack University Medical Center. Dr. Benjamin, why is it so important to use CT imaging every day? Well, a daily CAT scan image of the tumor is obtained before treatment. It's critically important. Cancer organs can use several centimeters from day to day, and tumors can change during treatment. It's imperative that the radiation patient's anatomy for that day.
FG, Nene, what's up, Nene?
Chemotherapy. Call the cell phone at 201-450-4263.
Nene.
That's 201-450-4263. You type it into any
What's up,
questions you
Nene?
may have about the treatment. To schedule an appointment, visit
your retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learning an instrument, start skateboarding. Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With acretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back. Woohoo! Darling move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So, wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to acretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's acretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council. Welcome to Total Wine and More.
I'm fired up to grill for burgers and want to impress the neighbors.
You'll love this Cabernet with your burger.
Wow, great wine.
Find what you love what you find. At Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. 21.
Accurate is a giant company that's tonight, partly cloudy and cool later on with a low of 55. Tomorrow, partly sunny, nice afternoon tomorrow. High of around 70 degrees going over there on Wednesday. And then tomorrow night, some cloudiness with a low of 57. Thursday, more clouds and sun and shower. And a high of 58 or 57 right now. Good afternoon, I'm Mary Mullen. West News Time at Zone 330.
Good afternoon, I'm Suzanne Calucci. It's another step forward towards moving forward from the pandemic. Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams are launching a panel to examine the economic future of New York City and the surrounding region. The Blue Ribbon panel is called the New New York, and it has about 30 members. Dan Johnson reckons that the city's economic recovery as deputy mayor after 9/11 is a co-chair. He tells me
They're obviously going to focus on commercial districts in the city and potentially beyond.
And Dr. Ross says they'll focus on reimagining how and where people work. But when I asked if that could mean a permanent hybrid model for workers, Dr. Ross said it's too early to say.
We know that issues like this are dynamic. We have to take that into account.
The panel hopes to have its recommendations by the end of the year. Eileen McComas, 1010 Wins News. News on 3:31. Let's get a check of traffic and transit this afternoon with Greg Wright.
Good news, bad news between the eastbound Long Island Expressway. That's the good news, relatively speaking. They got rid of the breakdown near 108th Street. It's still awful. It's just not as awful. The B2E getting out to the Grand Central and then more company over the outside line. Bad news, northbound Van Wick before to go right. So the person down front in the right lane, and now it's one big cross from Kennedy Airport all the way out to the Long Island Expressway.
חלילה וספגתי גזע לכל אגף תחתון 1505 כולה
That combination is going to be in pretty decent shape for you. Garden State Parkway southbound flows over Route 22. Northbound's already loading up. Same trade for 145. And a jam call to Barnsburg traffic zip line. 944 Jam 1010. That's 844 Jam 1010. Traffic sponsored by the Barnes Firm. I'm Greg Rice on 1010 Wins.
I'm attorney Rich Barnes. If you've been in a car crash, choosing the right firm is crucial to get the help you need and the best results possible.
Wednesday time 3:32. Let's get a check of the AccuWeather 4-day forecast. Here's meteorologist Brian Thompson.
This is there we have a fair amount of clouds still overhead right now. There are some breaks in the clouds here and there, especially the farther north and east you go into Connecticut, even eastern Long Island. Some places seeing a fair amount of sunshine, but again, most areas seeing mostly cloudy sky. We'll see some more breaks in the clouds in the afternoon tonight. Pretty comfortable night ahead, low to 55 in the city, close to 50 in the suburbs. Partly sunny for tomorrow will be a nice afternoon, high near 70s. Clouds tomorrow night, low 57. I think we'll start to see more clouds building back in on Thursday. Still some breaks of sun, but we could see a shower during the afternoon, a high of 68. Warmer on Friday with clouds and some sun. It will be more humid too, with a couple of showers and even a thunderstorm with clouds. Friday's high of 77. Times of clouds and sunshine into Saturday. Still could see a shower or thunderstorm, but it certainly does not look like a washout at this point. Saturday's high of 75 degrees. And now the
Allergy Alert forecast sponsored by ENT and Allergy Associates. Book your same-day appointment online today. And today's outlook is medium high with trees once again being the predominant pollen. Right now we're 67 degrees with most of the cloudy, a bit center going down to 55. I'm asking weather meteorologist Brian Thompson on New York's weather station 1010 Capital One shopping searches for and applies available coupon codes. What's in your life? Savings and available coupons vary.
When time 3:33. More than 50 years ago, then President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. And now there's word of an alleged plot to kill another former president in the very same city. According to a warrant obtained by Forbes, an ISIS operative wanted to assassinate former President George W. Bush in Dallas last November in retaliation for the killing of Iraqis during the 2003 Iraq War. The suspect, who Forbes is not identifying because no charges have been filed, is accused of reaching out to contacts who turned out to be undercover agents, FBI agents, for information on getting fake police identifications to help carry out the killing, and for help getting accomplices out of the U.S. once the plot was complete. The report says the suspect had been in the U.S. since 2020 and had an asylum application pending. There's no word on his current whereabouts, and there's been no comment from former President Bush. The Adams administration is continuing its push to keep Washington from taking control of Rikers Island. City Correction Department Commissioner Luis Molina went before a federal judge today to lay out the plan to address staffing practices at Rikers and to cut down on the number of violent incidents and detainee deaths at the jail complex. In the wake of a detainee's death last month, a sixth so far this year, the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan raised the prospect of federal receivership for Rikers, pretty much putting Washington in charge with the city retaining only partial control. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial continued today with Heard's attorneys resting their case. Amber Heard's lawyers did not call Johnny Depp as a witness, as was initially suggested. Depp is suing Heard for libel over her 2018 Washington Post op-ed piece, in which she describes herself as a victim of abuse without mentioning Depp by name. Judge Penny Ascarati also rejected a motion from Depp's attorneys to toss Heard's $100 million counterclaim against Depp. Heard claims Depp's then lawyer, Adam Waldman, defaced her when he called her allegations of abuse a hoax. Depp testified he never struck Heard. Emojis are aware. Blood price at the pump has reached a record high several times in the last week or so, and it looks like it could go even higher for the upcoming holiday weekend.
Here in California, gas stations with $8 per gallon gas are now beginning to pop up. Many here paying over $6 a gallon for regular unleaded. $100 plus fill-ups are now the norm for many Californians.
$190.
New government data shows prices went up 10 cents a gallon in the past week, and analysts say they will likely remain high all summer. Down EDC News.
Postponed the summer Aerosmith shows suddenly canceled. Find out next on Central Wings Entertainment News, Wednesday time, 2:36.
Finding a great band of style in the U.S. Yes, you can find a leader in Asia, but not easy. It's powerful technology that refines and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So,
the FBI concluded there was no Russian collusion the day after they got the information and took their first look at it. The CIA shortly thereafter, and then we went through 4 years of only $40 million worth of investigations and impeachments. And the same people that brought us that are sitting on the January 6th committee. And a Republican voted for that? Well, go join some other party. Please, we don't need you. We don't need to be in these battles with the Democrats, and they remain united around their crimes. They remain united on Russian collusion. They may be united on it now. I mean, it's a lie. We're asking people to unite around the truth. America is first. There should be lower taxes. But we should rely much more on the private sector. The government shouldn't be directing our lives as we do. We're moving toward communism and socialism. We believe in intervention when necessary, but not intervention, anytime we're called upon to do it. And there better be some very, very clear reasons for it and some very clear limits on what it's going to involve. And there better be people that who appreciate it and want to participate in it and have to pay for it. That's how you get a great effort. We want an America that was like the America we had under Trump, where minorities got the highest wages they ever got in their life. And they're suffering. Everybody's suffering. Every day. Our wages are... I didn't cause inflation. Trump did. No, it wasn't Trump. It was Putin. So we got two people here in the metropolitan area. The Republicans have to remember there are two different dates for the primary. I know the Republican one clearly because my son is in that primary. June 28th. You've got to vote against Andrew Garbarino, who voted for the January 6th hitman kill Trump committee. Continuation of Russian collusion, smart drive suppression, still votes. With people all who have a history supporting in the case of the conspiracy to further the Russian collusion story, many of those people, it was a crime. They knew they were framing an innocent person. They had been told. Let's take 56. He was told that it wasn't true by the head of national security in Obama's administration. And yet he went ahead and he offered witnesses and evidence that he's never produced. Why isn't he called in front of the committee? Why is this committee that Garbarino and Smith voted for not investigating the murder of Ashley Babbitt? I'll give you one fact that I'd like to know the answer to. He was all about going into Pelosi's office. When the car arrived there, it was a big crowd, it was a crowd. There were two cops in front of the door, other cops in the back. The two cops voluntarily surrendered the door to what appeared to be at least one Antifa guy and another guy. Why did the cops let them bang the door? Is the committee going to answer that question? Have you heard any words about that? I'm going to explain why Ashley Babbitt...
ZF Halia, or one other.
כן, מה נשמע? אתה יכול לאזן, לעשות שם גן ילדים, לא? יכול לעשות שם גם ילדים. בסדר, יופי, שבח לאל, תודה לשואל. אני אומר, אתה יכול לעשות שם גן ילדים, לא? תביא איזה גננת.
לא, בשביל מה?
תביא את מזל חלה. תעשו ביחד גן ילדים, לא?
לא, מה אתה מדבר שטות? איפה אתה בעבודה?
כן, אני בדרך מהשדה תעופה למנהטן. אין לי נוסע, אז אני יכול לדבר. כן. כן, לא שמעת, אז אני מוריד, בוא נלחץ. התמונה מעדיפה בלי מצלמה, אז רגע, אני לוחץ. שאלתי אותו, עוד לא חזר אליי. כן, כן, שלום. שאלתי אותו, עוד לא חזר אליי. לא יודע, אבל לא חייב לעשות את זה. את כמו אומרת, גם יעלו לתיירים את הוועד ל1,000 שקל ואין להם כסף והם... אבל כמה משלמים עכשיו? 100 שקל לדוגמה? וגם את 100 שקל האלה עושים לו בעיות לזה, ואומרים לו תבוא מחר, תבוא שבוע הבא, אז נראה לכם 500 שקל, עוד יותר יעשו בעיות. קשה לגבות מהם 100 שקל, איך יגבו מהם 500? ואז אחר כך תובעים אותם בתי משפט וזה, אז צריך להגיד לדיירים, אם תגיד להם, יהיה 500 שקל, אתם מוכנים לשלם לזה? אני לא מבין שכל כך הרבה שטחים פנויים, מה הם נדבקים למקום הזה בכלל? משהו מסריח פה. וזה אני יודע, יש רכבת, הכל טוב ויפה, אבל מה, משפטים, עושים קצת צבע בחוץ, שמים מעלית, ואז ידחפו לאנשים אחרים. לא יודע, אומרים שהם תחמנים. יפה אמרה לי לא להתעסק איתם, תחמנים מאוד, נבלות. אז מה להתעסק איתם? כן, אבל תשאלי אחד. נראה לי אף אחד לא מוכן שם, הם כולם אנשים פשוטים שאין להם ראש לשטויות. זהו, אנחנו בכלל קומה ראשונה, אנחנו לא מסכימים. מעלינו ההוא לא מסכים. זה וגם כולם. אני לא יודע, מה עם חנן, והאתיופים, מה האתיופים, אני נראה לך ש... מחר עזב, כן. לא יודע, תהי בקשר עם זיווה, מה עם זיווה אומרת? היא רוצה לעשות את זה, כן. אבל אני והיא קומת קרקע, מה זה יכול לעזור? זה לא משנה לנו, אנחנו קומת קרקע. מה זה יכול להזיז לנו? מה את מתכוונת פרויקט אחד? שמזיזים אותנו משם? מה את מתכוונת? יש לנו כבר קומת קרקע. מה את מתכוונת? אני חשבתי שרק מוסיפים מבחוץ מעלית ועושים קצת צבע. אז הורסים לגמרי ולבנות. תאמיני לי, שנוסעים בדרך לוולפסון, יש עשרות שטחים ריקים שיבנו שם, וזהו, מאחורי בית חולים וולפסון, אחרי תחנת הדלק שם, מול התחנת דלק שם, עשרות שטחים ריקים, מה הם נדבקים אלינו? תחנת דלק מול וולפסון שם, מאחורי זה שטחים ריקים, סתם שדות. שיבנו שם, מול הרכבת גם, מה הבעיה? גם בדרך לתקווה, עשרות שטחים ריקים. לא יודע. כן. לא יודע, צריך לבדוק. ובינתיים אני חושב שנזכיר את זה, ולא ייקח להם בטח כמה שנים עד שיסכימו, עד שזה אישורים וזה, זה ייקח להם זה 5 שנים. אני קורא את כל ההודעות, אני לפעמים מגיב, זה משתדל. כן. עוד לא חזר. הבן שלו מכיר עוד 2-3 מתווכי דירות באזור, אני אתקשר איתם. מה, קצת תמונות, קצת ספרים. את הספרים תביאי לבית כנסת, את התמונות לברדה, תחלקו ביניכם, זהו. כן, כל השאר אני משאיר שם, מה... עכשיו, בקשר למצלמה, איזה טלפון יש לך? יש לך אייפון או אנדרואיד? סמסונג. אז את צריכה ללכת מקום איפה שזה נקרא פליי. פליי זה כאילו איפה שמורידים את האפליקציות. תלכי לשם, תכתבי באנגלית לוג'י, L-O-G-I, לוג'י סרקל, ואז יופיע לך כזה אייקון כזה, צהוב כזה, צהוב עגול. את יודעת לכתוב באנגלית L-O-G-I. כן, ואחרי לוג'י תרשמי סרקל, C-I-R-C-L-E. ואז תוריד, כן. ואז רק רושמת את הסיסמה, תעשי לוגין, סיסמה שרשמתי לך, האימייל והסיסמה, ואת אמורה לראות את זה. מה קרה? זה היה לך? נפל לך? החלף טלפון? מה קרה? נאבד לך הטלפון שלך? ואיפה האייפון שהבאת לך? הבאת אותו ליוסי? הוא כמעט לא מתקשר, מתקשר כל יום, לפעמים, כן. הוא היה מתקשר, עכשיו הוא לא כל כך מתקשר. כן, שלחתי את כנרת אליו, שתעזור לו עם הטלפון, תקינה לו כל מיני דברים, וואטסאפ, פייסבוק, סרטים, נטפליקס. איך שיצא, זרק אותו לשירותים. אומר, נפל לו לשירותים. זה קטע אמיתי. אלי אתמול עבד לו הטלפון שלשום. התקשר אליי בחור אחד, אני תמיד שם מדבקה, יש לי מדבקה של השם שלי, שמה. אז התקשר מהמדבקה, איפה הוא מצא אותו? במסילה של הרכבת, טוב שהרכבת לא עלתה. כן, אמר לו, איך הגיע למסילה? הוא אומר, לא יודע, נפל לו. והוא אומר בגלל שהוא עובד של הרכבת, אז אלי הציע לו כסף, 20-40 דולר, הוא אומר לו, אסור לי לקחת כסף בגלל שאני עובד של הרכבת. הוא בודק את המסילות וזה, הוא אומר, הוא מוצא כל מיני דברים שם. אז בסדר. כן, אני שמתי לאלי טלפון, מדבקות, גם עליו צריך לשים מדבקה. יש לו מקל הליכה, נעליים, התיקים, הטלפונים, הכל שמתי לו מדבקות. כל שני 50 מתקשרים אליי, מצאנו מקל הליכה, מצאנו תיק, מצאנו טלפון, מצאנו אופניים, כי הוא מתבגר, הוא שוכח. גם למאנל, אלי הוא נרדם, אני אמרתי לו שצריך איזשהו ויטמין C, D, 12, הוא לא לוקח שום ויטמינים. מגנזיום, שעוררו לו קצת את הדם, כי הוא יושב כל מקום שיושב 2 דקות, טק, נרדם שעה. לפעמים הוא נרדם ברכבת, והוא לא יוצא מהתחנה שלו, אז כל לילה הלוך חזור הלוך. כן, מנואל גם זה, אבל מנואל עובד מהבית, הוא לא כל כך מסתובב. כן, כל מקום שהוא הולך, במכולת, בשירותים, באוטו. כן, מנואל ואלי. כן, ישלח לו חבילה מדבקות. זה טוב המדבקות האלה. תקשרו אליי. כן. אני גם במקרה אתמול מצאתי טלפון. ומישהו היה גר לידי שהשכן נפל לו גם את זה. כי היה את הכתובת שלו, היה רישיון נהיגה שלו. כדאי להוציא לכוכב התעודת זהות ישראלית, עושים לי בעיות, מבקשים הרבה מסמכים. שיהיה, אני יודע. כן, כשאני אבוא איתה, שלא עשו בעיות בכניסה, ביציאה, או יש לה דרכון אמריקאי, לא עשו לה בעיות. אבל אני אומר, טוב, שיהיה, מה יש להפסיד? מקסימום יהיה לה שתי אזרחות ישראלית ואמריקאית. כמו שיש לי, יש לי גם ישראלית וגם אמריקאית. יש חוק, כל ישראלי בעולם שנולד לו בן, לא משנה מה או מי, הבן גם זכאי. לאתיופים, לערבים, לכולם מחלקים. הישראלי שנולד לו בן בחו"ל עושים לו בעיות. איזה דפוקים. האוקראינים באים, 2,000 אוקראינים באו, הביאו להם תעודת זהות, מגורים, כספים, הכל. ויש הרבה מסכנים, אנשים מלאכי סעד עומדים בתור, אין להם מגורים, לא מביאו להם כלום. פתאום הם מצאו להם 2,000 דירות. זה לא בסדר. גם יש... כן, הבאתי להם את כל המסמכים שהם רוצים. מכתב מהרופא, מכתב נישואין, מכתב גירושין, מגורים ביחד, תמונות. עדיין אומרים, טוב, תחפש לנו, מה אתם רוצים? מספר נעליים? את יודעת, אומרים רק זוג מתאים יש רק בחנות נעליים, אומרים. יש כאלה אומרים, לא מצאו את הזוג שלהם, אומרים להם, זוג מתאים רק בחנות נעליים. ערבים אפילו יש להם תעודת זהות כחולה. מה זה קשור? ערבים יש להם תעודת זהות כחולה. מה זה שייך? אז תראי, ברדה, קניתי לו, בעצם השארתי לו את הקורקינט, הוא מבסוט ממנו. עכשיו ברדה רוצה שאני אקח אותו. היא מתעצלת ללכת לסדר את הברקסים, הברקסים נשחקים. אז הכל חנות אופניים, כולם בארץ שלהם קורקינט כאלה, אז מה הם זרוקים את זה, קצת תקנים, תקמצנת, תשלם על הברקסים. לא, הוא בחור חכם, הוא לא טיפש, זה עוזר לו ללכת פה או שם, אתה יודע. למה לאכזב את השמחה שלו? למה לאכזב נער את השמחה שלו? זה מה? מה? כולם נוסעים שם. כן. מה שלום יוסי? מה הוא עושה? מה שלום הרגל השנייה? הרגל השנייה, יש לו קיל או שהוא טיפל בקיל? אני גם יש לי תור לקיל, אולי החודש הזה, החודש הבא. יש לי גם קיל קטן. אבל מה עם קביים? אז לא קביים, רגל טוטמית. מה עם רגל טוטמית? אני אגיד לך את האמת בינינו, אני חושב שעדיף לו לגור שם, הוא יגור בבית רגיל, יהרוס אותו כמו הבית של אבא, עם המים שלו, בשטויות שלו, יזניח את עצמו. אין לו השגחה, אין לו כלום, שישאר שם וזהו, אין לו מה לחפש מים מגורים למעלה. כן, לא גר איתו, הייתי אצלו כמה פעמים, כן, לא גר, אין אצלו, יש עוד מישהו דייר? אותו חדר, לא? יש לו טלוויזיה שם. אז מה עם הטלוויזיה שקניתי לו? אבל מה עם הטלוויזיה? אני אומר, קניתי לו טלוויזיה, מקרר, הכל, הוא צריך להעביר, שיעביר לו. זה טלוויזיה שאני קניתי לו ממחסני חשמל, ענקית. שם אותה על הקיר. לא יודע, אולי שם אותה על הקיר, התקינו לו, תעשו התקנה חינם. בחדר השני הזה, איזה חדר הוא, למה העבירו אותו? החדר לבד כי... איזה חדר מספר? לא, אני לא יודע, הוא לא אמר לי. משהו צריך פלאפל, שווארמה, הוא מתקשר עם הכרטיס שלי, שולחים לו אוכל. אז קיבלת כסף, הכל בסדר? של מנואל? שילמת דוחות שלו, את הכל? כן, אמרתי לו, שישלם מיד, אם לא יעבירו את זה לעורך דין, יעבירו פי 2 שלו. טוב ששילמתם את זה מיד. כן, אני מחנה את האוטו כמה בלוקים מהבית. גם אני עולה 7 קומות ברגל, עולה יורד 7 קומות ברגל. ויש לנו מכון התעמלות בבניין. יש לנו גם אופניים. יש לנו אופניים. וגם אני כל היום רץ אחרי ילדה, קצת עולים מכאן שעשועים כאלה. להתחבט, צריך לתפוס אותה, למצוא אותה. אני גם שעשועים. דאדי, תפוס אותי. אבא, תנסה לתפוס אותי. שומעת? האישה בסדר, אז המספר הסודי של הווי-פיי שלה בארץ זה 051, משהו עם 888, זה המספר של הסלפון שהיה לי שם. כתוב לך את זה באיזה מקום? של הווי-פיי, של האינטרנט של הבית. השם שלה... לא, אבל... זה מזמן, צריכה לחפש את זה. בכל מקרה, אני אומר לך, תראי, כתוב, והשם זה אבנר עליה, והסיסמה זה הטלפון. אם יש לך את המספר של טלפון, שלחי לי אותו גם, אני רוצה לראות את זה. אני אשנה אותו למספר של הבית, ל-03-659-3888, יהיה יותר קל. כן, אני רואה את המצלמות, אני שמתי מצלמות גם בחצר, אני רואה את הכל עובד יופי. כן, צריך ללכת לפליי, להוריד שם את הלוג'י סירקל, ואז בסיין אין, כאילו בחתימה את רושמת את מה שאמרת לך, וזה עולה מיד. יש שם כל מיני מצלמות של כל מיני מקומות של הבית של מנואל, ואז התייחסים, כל מיני מצלמות, יש שם איזה 3-4 מצלמות שם. בגינה זה התנתק, אני לא יודע למה, אבל שאני אומר צריך לבדוק. בגינה התנתק, זה עצמתי אחת בגינה. אז עכשיו הרוסי גר שם על ידינו, וגם עוד בחורה אחת, יש לו שותפה. זאת אומרת, שליחה עם אופנוע, שליחה עם אופניים. והוא עזב. היא מפרסמת ביד שנייה, אולי גם אני אפרסם ביד שנייה. כן, תעשי להם רעיון, בסדר. תראה, גם זוג ירא שמיים הם לא הכי טלית שקולה. צריך לבדוק כל אחד, כאילו, אתה יודע, את ההכנסות שהם עובדים, תלוש משכורת, כל מיני דברים כאלה. שהם עובדים, כן, דברים שהם עובדים, ולא דברים אנשים רציניים ששניהם עובדים. את הקרדיט, העבר. לא גיסר, כן. כתוב לך שם sign in, אל תעשי sign up. sign up זה כאילו לפתוח חשבון חדש. את לא צריכה sign up, זה נקרא sign in, זה כאילו את מנויה כבר. וב-sign in את שמה את האימייל, ואחר כך את עושה את המספר הסודי. המספר הסודי את עושה א' גדול, כמו ה-A, את יודעת מה זה A גדול? כמו קאפס כזה, ואחר כך A, V, כן, ה-VI קטן, כן. זה אמור להיות בסדר. אני עכשיו מנסה לאסוף את הילדה מהגן, יכול להיות, עכשיו, אתה יודע, אני מזכיר כל מיני דירות בעיר שאני עוזר לאנשים אחרים להזכיר, אז יש בניין אחד שיש לנו שתי דירות שם שאני מזכיר, אז עכשיו אני הולך לבנות להם קבוצה של וואטסאפ, כמו שיש לסונקי, קבוצה של וואטסאפ כזה, הבניין, ואני מציע לדיירים, אני אתקין להם מצלמות כאלה, כמו שיש לי, משהו דומה. כי מתלוננים שהרבה גנבים באים להם, גונבים להם או מהבית או חבילות מהלובי. אז כל הזמן מתקשרים אליי, מבקשים ממני, אתה יודע, להיכנס ללוג'יק שלי, אבל אני יכול לחייב אותם $2 כאילו לחודש או $20 לשנה, זה כמו מנוי, דמי החזקה. וגם אם רוצים, אני אתקין להם מצלמה על הדלת, זה עוד איזה $200. איך אתם תהיו בטוחים, לראות מי נכנס, מי יוצא, כל מיני דברים כאלה. אז אני עובד על זה, זה טוב, הוואטסאפ של הבניין, ככה יש תקשורת בין הדיירים של הבניין. כן, מה לעשות, גם בעל המכולת הרי. הוא עדיין שמה? בעל המכולת, איך קוראים לו? חמיד. חמדי יש עוד, כן, הוא כל הזמן אומר לי, דחוף, תודיע לי אם אתה מפר, מזכיר. אני לא רוצה להתעסק איתו. וגם אלה שם, הדיירים לידינו שם, הבחורה, איך קוראים לה? ישראלית? את יודעת, על יד הגינה לידינו, מצד ימין, איך קוראים להם? גם הם, אני לא רוצה להתעסק איתם עכשיו. נגיד מישהו מבחוץ, מישהו בחוץ, איזה זוג שעובד, זה... הולכים לבריכה, הולכים לכל מיני מקומות עם הילדה, פעילויות עם הילדה. לא כל כך הולכים, הוא גר איזה שעתיים, שלוש במנהטן. אבל הוא בא לפעמים. כן, מטוס. לא נוסע את המטוס כזה, את הנהג. שנתי, כל פעם שקובע בחורה מנהטן, זה עובר אלינו על זה. מביא אותה. אלי בא כל יום, שישי. באזור. יש לו הרבה דיירים שם, הוא לא גר לבד, הוא שניים, שלושה אנשים. לא, זה לא לבד, אני אומר לך שלאחד הרים הוא מזכיר אותם. שותף, מטבח, שירותים. נראה לך, אני אדור שם עם אישה נמזרים, עם הילדה. איפה את? לא רואים אותך, לא אומר אותך, נעשית לי, איפה את? שם, מתבגרים, איך הזמן עף? עכשיו, מה עמדות את זה? אולי נבוא לארץ, התחתן עם אוקסנה, יש לה 3 דירות, ההורים שלה נפטרו. לבש על אוקסנה. אוקסנה, אולי. צריך להביא שמאי שיעשה הערכה, שמאי, מכירה שמאי טוב. תשרים שמאי, אני אשלם לו, שיעשה הערכה, שישלח לי תפריט, מה גודל הדירה, את יודעת, אורך, רוחב. אין לי את הדף הזה, כי אנשים שואלים אותי, מה גודל הדירה, כמה שווה, אני לא יודע מה. שמאי, הוא עושה לך בדיקה. הוא צריך לרשום, לבדוק בטאבו, עם העורך דין הקורטי הזה, רשם את זה על שמי. של אריאל, שילמתי לו בזמן, הוא אומר, הכל סודר, אני לא רואה שום מסמך שלו. ארנונה על שמי, אני לא יודע. יש לי באיזשהו מקום, אבל צריך לבדוק את כל העניין. אני שמעי, לפני שמוכרים, מזכירים. כי השוק משתנה. כן, ואת אומרת, איפה ישימו את הדיירים זמנית? מה, ישימו אותם במלון? מה, ישימו אותם ברחוב? מי יודע כמה שנים כך להם לבנות? יודע, אחר כך שיגמרו לבנות, אנשים נסו להיכנס, יגיד להם, לא מכיר אותך, מה... קרו מקרים כאלה. על מה אתה מדבר? פשוט לא להסכים, אני לא חושב שיש הרבה מסכימים שם. תעשי סקירה בוואטסאפ, תעשי משאל, כמו משאל עם, משאל זה, כמה דיירים מסכימים, כמה כן, כמה לא, תעשי את החשבון, תראי כמה אחוזים. אפילו תשאלי אחד בדלת, כן או לא, תרשמי לך. כן, בסדר, אבל לא כולם מסכימים. אם אומרים, אם הכל טוב ויפה עכשיו, אז מה, כל האנשים רוצים, איפה ילכו? אני ראיתי איזה בניין אחד שם מול הבית כנסת, לא ראיתי שהרסו, רק שהייתי צבעו קצת מאחורה, אולי הוסיפו מרפסת ושמו מעלית וזהו. זה מה שעשו, לא הרסו. הנה עכשיו זאב עונה לי, אומר לי, כאילו, אמר לו, הבן שלו עסוק עכשיו להזכיר, הוא גר עכשיו בבוסטון, אין לו זמן להתעסק עם זה, אז הוא שואל אותי מה ביקשתי ממנו. ביקשתי ממנו, אם הוא יכול להזכיר את הדירה, ליצור להזכיר. אבל הוא לא ענה על השאלה של מחר, למה עזב. אפילו אני לא שואל אותו כמה מחר, הוא לשאול שאלות אישיות. אנשים לא אוהבים לענות שאלות אישיות. רק שואל אותו למה מחר, למה עזבת. כן. נראה מה התשובה שלו, זה מה הוא חושב. אני גם חשבתי להזכיר את המקום דרך Airbnb כמו צימרים. אז צריך לבוא לנקות כל פעם בין דיירים. מה? למה לא? מה? מזכירים כל מקום. מה את חושבת? תל אביב בכלל פקוקה, תל אביב בכלל אין מקום להזכיר. אנשים מזכירים קצת רחוב יותר. זה 10 דקות מתל אביב, יש את הרכבת, יש את האוטובוס, יש את הכל. יש גם את הקורקינטים האלה בכל פינה. כשהייתי גר שם, אני הלכתי למרכז תל אביב, תוך 10 דקות הייתי בנחלת בנימין, ברובינסקי, עם הקורקינט. מתחמק כזה, אני שואל אותו כמה פעמים, מה דעתך על הפינוי, פרויקט של בינוי? אני שואל אותו שוב את השאלה, מה דעתך על פינוי? הוא עונה לי תשובות אחרות. כמה תחמץ. אז מי גר אצל חנן? אז אלה מול חמדי, לאותם אנשים או לאנשים אחרים? לאותם אנשים או אנשים אחרים? כאילו מהמשפחה של חמדי? שמתי לב שאלה ערבים שגרים בתל אביב, ביפו, כל מקומות, הם שמים דגל כזה של... לא יודע, דגל של סעודיה, הם שמים איזשהו דגל. אתה ראית את הדגל שלהם, דגל של הערבים הם שמים? תסתכלי במרפסות שלהם, כתוב בערבית, כאילו... פעם הייתה עד שעה 3, עכשיו הלכנו לה עד שעה 6. ככה אני אהיה פנוי לעבודה שלי, כי בשעה 3 צריך לעצור את העבודה, לעשות. אז הלכנו לה עד 6. כן, היא בסדר עם זה. אמא שלה מצאה עבודה, היא גננת בגן ילדים, וזה בית ספר של ילדים. אז היא מורה כמו מורה, או כמו אסיסטנט של בית ספר פרטי. אז היא עובדת מ-8 עד 6. לא, ב-6 אני לוקח אותה לבית ומחנה את האוטו. כן, לא, היא שמה מ-8 בבוקר עד 6 בערב, יום רצוף, יום שלם. ועושים להם כל מיני ציור, מלאכה, כן, ישנים, יש להם גם יש לי גם ארוחות בוקר, צהריים ערב, גם יש להם מזרונים כאלה קטנים, נחים, ישנים. ויש להם הכל. גם מספרת השמות של הילדים, כל שני וחמישי יש יום הולדת לילד אחר, מביאים עוגות, נרות. וזה בחינם, זה מהעירייה, כל העירייה שלנו. אני ילדים, הדירה, על האוכל פה גם, הכל פה, לא יודע למה בארץ לא עושים את זה. פה את הולכת לכל יום בתי כנסת, כנסיות, מביאים לך כמה שקים של... כל המסלוצה מהסופרמרקט. חלב, עגבניות, מפונים, ביצים, בשרים, הכל חינם. יש את זה גם ככה בארץ, או רק בחגים? אבל רק בחגים, לא כל יום. זהו, אז אמרתי לאלי, לא כל יום. פה עושים את זה כל יום. צריך לעמוד פעמים קצת בתור. צריך שיעשו את זה גם אז, כשמעת יוקר המחיה הוא גבוה, אנשים... הדלק על המוניות, הסופרמרקט, זה צריכים באמת לעשות להם את המבצעים. הנה, אני אומר לו, מה אתה... אני שואל, 2 מיליון, אני שואל את זה, מה אתה חושב על בינוי, פינוי, שינוי? מה הוא עונה לי? אתה יודע מה יהיה עוד 20 שנה? אני לא יודע איזה תשובה זאת. אני אומר לו, לא. אני אומר לו, לגבי עכשיו, מה... לגבי עכשיו אני שואל. יש לי תשובות שהוא מפריע. ועכשיו אני שואל. כן, אני שואל אותו, לגבי עכשיו אני שואל, להצטרף או לא, כאילו, מה דעתך? כן. תביא שמאי. איפה את שם עכשיו, בבית, בטבריה איפה? את בסוף סולקי. אוקיי, יאללה, להתראות, כל טוב. לבית. ניסה לאסוף את כוחם.
Like a staffer for an intern, for a staffer for an intern, to a consultant, Philip. No, nobody can follow that. It's far too complicated. The staffer is the consultant and the intern is the consultant. But nobody can follow it. It's Hillary. It's, the woman who came top in all those stupid Time magazine polls of, top women in the world. Everybody's heard of Hillary Clinton. She's got a book out. What happened? No, what also happened? More of what happened. Just when you thought it was safe to go into the what happened. I know what happened last summer. She's got all these books out. And the truth is, it's like that Agatha Christie novel where the narrator comes out, we've done it. With Hillary Clinton's book. It's the narrator who did it. That's what's so fantastic about it.
Washington Post, you mentioned Rocco. Washington, the Amazon Prime Washington Post. Now, I remember, when the Georgia election laws were going up, you had all these same culprits, all of them, whining that this was the new Jim Crow. Oh my God, those horrible, racist, bigoted Republicans in Georgia, why are they taking us left to put us in chains, all that nonsense, right? And then those people that actually read the laws that were being proposed said, no. They're actually expanding voting rights, and they're making it easier for people to vote, not harder. And in fact, the final bill is less onerous than what is taking place in elections in Delaware and many other Democrat states. They never, these people in the left never believed it. They kept on saying that it was horrible. Black people hard as shit, as always. Well, they're voting. And guess what? It's a record number of people turning out to vote in Georgia. How did that happen?
Well, because nothing the Democrats say matters after they've said it. So they put this out there a year before the election, then the election comes along, it's not at all like everything they said. But you know what? My favorite line, actually, Joe Biden is just a look like Jim Eagle. I was like Jim Eagle was Captain America's sidekick in the 1940s comics. That's what he sounds like. Captain America and Jim Eagle fighting for truth, justice, the American. Anyway, I know he's like a character on Michael's old school body cover or whatever. I don't know what it's gone through Joe Biden's mind. But ever since that, I think it affects this Georgia voting rights bill. Makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, they're just wrong. And the thing about it is, you know, this is a new world. With the COVID and lockdowns for 2 years, we've got all these crazy transnational groups making plans for, and China taking over the planet without firing a shot. And the Democrats are just frozen, basically, in a world that's a Christie Minstrel show circa 1873. All this, the lingo they talk, the way, the whole attitude is if somehow America froze 150 years ago and they just can't move on from that. For a party that claims to be progressive and about the future, they're just mired in these sort of same sterile tropes, circling and circling and circling. So, as you say, on the ground, there's actually more people voting than ever before.
It is just remarkable, and we will not see any of these people that raise these racist tropes come out and say, who made a mistake? Never mind. Speaking of never mind, there's a guy in Oklahoma. This guy's named Mickey Dolan. Was he really a rock group?
Hey, when I'm on these, people say we bump you around, and this Mickey Dolan really wants to bump you around. This is this Oklahoma state rep who wants to perform a vasectomy on basically every 14-year-old boy. And actually, I would have thought these days every 14-year-old girl, because if I follow the swimming championships that's the girls' penises these days. So I think he wants to perform a vasectomy on all the young Oklahoma ladies. But of the monkeys, and he wants to put in his act, Oklahoma where the vasectomist comes sweeping down the plain, which is we all love him. So he's trying to get a rise out of us because he's saying that all the women, that they're not going to let women have an abortion in Oklahoma, so that now they're launching a Democrat war on boys by making them go under vasectomy. And he'll say that then, when they reach a certain age, they're going to reverse the vasectomy. Yeah, like it's a government vasectomy, that's sure to be reversible.
Out of me talking about vasectomy. Nothing in any way whatsoever. But I mean, this
is like most lovely working blue. You've got your Hillary, I don't even want to go revisit the Hillary gag. You're doing, you should do a crime story about some pervert and use the old line about the evidence won't stand up in court. That's where we're going with this. Most lovely working.
system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Most credit cards offer you cash back, real money in your
Cash back.
Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Rand software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 3.3% of their bottom line in the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/join. 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 Sponsored by Capital One Shopping. Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Capital One Shopping. What's in your wallet? Savings and available coupon codes. Talk Radio 77. Off on one of the passengers. He smacked him. This guy that he smacked happened to be a former NFL player, Brendan Langley. I think he plays up for one of the Connect leagues right now. And so what happens is Langley is using a wheelchair instead of one of those $5 or $10 or $15 or $20 push carts that you could rent at the airport, which are always a pain in the neck to try to get. And so he apparently found a wheelchair. He put his stuff in the wheelchair. He's rolling it up to the United Airlines counter. And one of the workers takes issue with it, and apparently, this is what I read in the news, and starts arguing with him. What we saw on the video, and again, videos start and videos stop. We don't know what took place before the video started. But the video shows an argument going on, and then it shows the United worker slapped this NFL guy. He gave him a Will Smith right in his face. He just rolled him. He Will Smithed him. Hi-yow! Right? And so after he hi-yows the NFL football player, Brandon Langley beat this guy down. He gave him a beat down. He gave him a, what did you just... And before he beat him down, he's turning and he's looking to other people like, did you just see this? Did you see this guy just hit me? That was what I think he was mouthing, something like that. And then he just went off and he just beat this guy down, right? The Port Authority police show up and they take the football player to jail. He was, now he's charged with simple assault. They released him on his own recognizance, but still, why was he arrested instead of the United Airlines worker? Now, you know that this must have been really bad because United Airlines fired the guy less than 24 hours later. They fired him. They're like, he's not our liability anymore. He's not our liability. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen, by the way. If I were this football player, I'd be suing United Airlines, and I would sue the Port Authority for this arrest. Now, I hate to tell you what this looks like to me because I don't want to, but let me put it like this. The Port Authority was of one skin tone, and the United guy was of another. And the guy with the darker skin tone got arrested, and the guy who struck first ends up getting fired, but they didn't take him off to jail, the Port Authority police. So I just think there's something that's incredibly, if this is real and there was nothing before that, this is just like blatant. And I think there needs to be a huge lawsuit.
Great fight.
This United Airlines, aren't they the ones that went on the plane and dragged off that Asian guy? Yeah. Like a creepy neighbor, State Farm does a 180 after whistleblower exposes transgender project for 5-year-olds. We covered this story yesterday in its infancy. A Miami worker for State Farm, apparently one of these diversity guys, signed up with this group called the Gender Cool Project to get explicit books into the hands of kindergartners and young children. The usual, what is becoming usual now, the usual transgender and non-binary person indoctrination. Apparently, and then Consumer Research, who exposed all of this, released a 30-second spot like a creepy neighbor. State Farm is there peddling sex to children as young as 5 years old. Well, State Farm wasn't having any part of it. They're like, what? This is happening with us? No. We're out of this. My guess is, just from reading in between the lines, and I could be wrong, my guess is the executives high up in State Farm didn't know that this was going on. And didn't know that their diversity guy was diversifying that much. And as soon as they found out the ad, especially with that branding like a creepy neighbor, State Farm was here, they're like, oh, we're not having this. And they backed right out of it. Nancy Pelosi is still in the news regarding abortion. She's gone public now criticizing the Catholic Church. She went on Morning Joe, that progressive show, where Joe Scarborough, who used to play like he was a conservative, is there with his wife. Well, wait a minute, did he divorce the first wife and marry Mika? Is that it? Yeah, I think that. Yeah, after his wife, Mr. Conservative, found out he was, well, I don't want to use that Canadian phrase, but he was doing the pooch. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi went on there. I wonder about the death penalty, which I'm opposed to. So is the church, but they take no action against people who may not share their view. So, Nancy Pelosi now is wondering out loud, okay, Catholic Church, why don't you come down hard on politicians who openly support the death penalty? And of course, she makes no distinction in her own mind or in the press between innocent life in the womb, innocent life, and lawful punishment for some of the most heinous killers, murderers, and criminals in our time. No distinction whatsoever. So in her mind, it's all relative. An innocent baby in the womb is the same as what's his name, who's still lingering. The guy that was responsible for the 9/11 plot, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is still, by the way, 22 years after the World Trade Center came down, the mastermind is still being held at Guantanamo Bay and has not been put on trial. 22 years later, he's sitting it out. And we have Nancy Pelosi asking the Catholic Church, hey, why are you bothering me about my support about taking babies out of the womb, this genocide that's happening in the womb, when we have people on death row that are not being handled? This is Nancy Pelosi's defense. It is pathetic. James Golden, WABC, Talk Radio 77. Remember, Catholic Night comes up next. And remember, we are here on the weekends, well, on Saturday at 7 a.m. for our Saturday morning radio extravaganza. So many calls. We're going to start with the calls, and we have more news right after this. Do not go away. You're listening to Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. It's the Rush Hour with Bo Snerdley on 77 WABC. WABC, traffic and transit. Okay, in New Jersey, Teaneck, we have Cedar Lane westbound between Garrison Avenue and River Road closed due to an accident. It's actually a school bus
construct a building. That's what we're hearing right now. In Lodi, we have Garibaldi Avenue westbound between Meadow Lane and Mill Street closed due to police activity. And in Harrison, stop traffic, I-280 westbound between Bergen Street and exit 14 ML King Boulevard. Checking the bridges and tunnels right now at the Sauer GWB. Inbound upper OK, lower OK, outbound heavy Lincoln, inbound 5 to 10, outbound 30 to 40. Holland inbound OK from Turnpike, from Route 109, outbound 20 to 30 minutes away. I'm Bob Brown with your 77 WABC Traffic and Transit Update.
The consistent economic turmoil we see every day is a clear indication you need to put your investments in a company that will look out for you and your family. Friends, last year your dollar lost a ton of value. Inflation rose by almost 7% in just 1 month toward the end of the year. This year, the stock market has been plummeting, and your portfolio is in trouble. Gold provides a hedge against inflation. Download their free investor's guide at LegacyTMinvestments.com.
If you need to hire, then you need Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform helps you schedule and conduct video interviews all in one place. Finding your next great hire has never been more streamlined. Get hiring at Indeed.com/credit.
Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Golden, known popularly as the Curly.
This is the Rush Hour with Bob Snerdley. Remember, Captain Night comes up next. It's gonna be a bright Sunday night, folks. Here's a story that is really kind of difficult to do, and we're gonna get to your calls, I promise. There's a story that in American Wire News today that should serve as a warning, by the way, for women that think this is going to be easy if Roe versus Wade is indeed overturned. And okay, I'll just get it quick. There's a story today in American Wire News that it's headlined, I was not prepared. News site reveals women's experiences with abortion by pill. Currently, there's a women's empowerment news website called The 19th. And they have published now the experience of several women who had medication abortions. And they published that earlier this week. Abortions by pill, including illegal abortions, will become more common in the likely event that Roe versus Wade is overturned. And then they quote one woman who said she wasn't prepared for how much pain she would be in. She decided, according to this article, to have a medication abortion without telling her husband. And she says she went through a huge amount of pain physically, non-stop nausea. She took her first pill at a clinic, second at home, heavy-duty prescription painkillers, yet she spent 3 days in bed with cramps. It took a week and a half for her to physically recover. Extremely difficult, says another woman who has had multiple medication abortions. We want people not to be so afraid of the pain that they continue with it on. But we want to be real about this. To not be so afraid of the pain that they
Watch out, vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Central Park.
Let's go to Jacqueline in Brooklyn. Jacqueline, welcome. WABC Talk Radio 77. Roma James Golden, a.k.a. Boston. Our Rush Hour. You're on, Jacqueline.
First of all, the government of Uruguay, talk about why she even cares about Well, they call me refuse to investigate. And if you give me the opportunity, I'd like to comment on one other thing. I'm sorry, James.
Go ahead. What was it?
Something separate. I happened to be watching Fox News yesterday, and if you'll allow me to mention the interviewer and the station that I was watching,
Go ahead.
your listeners can hear it for themselves. It was an interview that was done by Lori Stokes of Fox News, the 6 o'clock news yesterday. People can look it up and watch it for themselves. With the city council speaker, Adriana Adams, who, when Lori Stokes answered the question, well, in dealing with violent crime in the city, would you be in favor of more police? And she hesitated before she answered the question, and she said, well, she's on board with making people feel safer. If residents feel safer, the appearance of more police in the community. Then she went on to say, well, we've never had a greater police presence. So she definitely does not seem to be in favor of the police. Never once did she say anything about Alvin Bragg or stopping the revolving door of letting criminals out of jail after repeatedly committing violent crime. But one thing that her party is good at is throwing money at crime. She's calling for $5 million for hate crime prevention, which is fine, but tripling the budget for affordable housing to $4 billion. We all know what happened under de Blasio, his wife's administration of the program Thrive, or as I call it, Die. That money still evaporated and no one knows what happened to it.
Unaccountable for, and you're talking about tens of millions of dollars that are unaccountable for, and there is no investigation whatsoever, and you're absolutely right. This city council, remember, these are the city council people that gave us the reforms that are allowing these perpetrators, or as Hillary Clinton would call them, these super predators, to roam the streets and commit more crime. So it is they are just short of saying defund the police. And by the way, the New York police budget did take a hit, a massive hit. And there aren't as many police on the street now as there have been in past years. So, folks, this Jacqueline is pointing out exactly where the problem lies. New York City Council is a big part of that problem. Thank you, Jacqueline, for your call. We appreciate you. Let's stay in Brooklyn and talk with Richard. Richard, how are you? Welcome to WABC Rush Hour with Buzz Nerdy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Golden.
That's fine.
I love your voice, and it's so nice to know that there's somebody you're in connection with Mr. Limbaugh. But there's one thing you said that is a lot more nefarious than you think when you mentioned the situation with this fellow like Coleman, right? It's worse than you can tell a thing. I don't know if you remember or not, but when Coleman was trying to pass the budget, he was trying to pass a massive tax increase. And I don't remember the name of the executive. One of the executives from Goldman Sachs told him that if those people were pulling the roof, we'll leave it. And he said if we left, that would collapse the tax in New York State, never mind New York City. Because all the ancillary employees they have all over the place, and the neighbors they live in, I think they're worried that Goldman Sachs is probably going to pick up rates to go to Florida and Texas. That's good. Such a bad tax collapse of the tax base is unimaginable. And I think that
Richard, thank you. What an amazing for remembering that, number one. And number two, yes, that explains what I brought up. It seems that all of a sudden, after a Goldman Sachs employee was killed, we finally are getting some action to bring police officers back to the overnights on New York City. It took this, a Goldman Sachs worker being killed. And this should be an embarrassment for Mayor Adams, and it should be not only an embarrassment for Adams, but for the Democrat Party, the corrupt Democrat Party that still prefers to see criminals on the streets and behind bars, apparently. Let us stay in Brooklyn again and talk with Joe. Joe, welcome, WABC Talk Radio 771 with James Golden, a.k.a. Buzz Nerdy.
Hey, so I too saw the video of the incident with the United Work employee and the altercation, and the first video I saw, I think, is the same one you and I both saw, where the guy slaps him and then he gets punched, and then later I saw a longer video which seems to show that that it was creatively edited, showing that the longer video shows that the extortion started like a good 5-6 seconds earlier, where you can't really see who started it. Obviously, no violence is okay, but we jump to conclusions based on what we see. There's more out there, more information, and someone could have deceptively edited that video with an intention of creating that question mark, and that
is exactly why I mentioned that if this video is as it appears. Because let us remember, folks, and when we started really noticing this, go back to the Rodney King video. To this day, there are people that never saw the entire Rodney King video. It was selectively edited to show what the media wanted to be seen. You didn't see back then, and I don't want to just spend too much on this, but you didn't see Rodney King belligerent toward the police officers and him threatening a female police officer. That was not seen on the video, and maybe it should have made a difference, maybe it didn't. But I thank you for that call. That is a real important part of the story. Now, we are up to our last minute, so I think it wouldn't be fair to take another call. Christine, if you want to talk about some of the gender books, we have more people that want to weigh in on the Port Authority, on Biden and Adams, and on the Port Authority. And so we can pick any of this and all of it back up tomorrow. Remember, Cats at Night up next. May God bless and protect each one of you and your families for real. James Golden, Rush Hour, tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Be here. We'll be here. See you then. Bye.
WABC Radio is proud to celebrate 100 years. From October 1st, 1921, to music radio, talk radio's crown jewel, worldwide and beyond. On WLIR-FM, Hampton Bays. Around the world to around the block. This is a WABC 77-second news update. 66 degrees, partly cloudy, 5 o'clock, 77 WABC time check, sponsored by Global Watches. Good afternoon, I'm Bob Brown.
5 at 5.
The governor of Texas says 14 students and 1 teacher are dead after a shooting at a Texas elementary school today. Uvalde Memorial Hospital says it received 13 children via ambulance for treatment after an active shooter is reported at Robb Elementary School. That's about 85 miles west of San Antonio. ABC News reporting the suspect is dead. The subway gunman is in custody. 25-year-old Andrew Abdullah turning himself into police to face charges in the death of 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez, shot to death while on the Q train heading to brunch on Sunday. A lawsuit filed in connection with the U.S. Senate primary in Pennsylvania. Dr. Mehmet Oz is leading David McCormick by 1/10 of 1 point, with 99% of the votes counted. McCormick sued, asking the Pennsylvania court to ensure counties obey a new federal appeals court decision. Police officials say they're bringing targeted night patrol to the subways.
Unknown caller.
Amount of crimes occur on trains at night. And the final New York City public.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm calling to confirm Avner's appointment.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm calling to confirm that she's coming with us tomorrow.
Wait, tomorrow what time?
10.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
horrific. Like, I can't even imagine the pain. John.
14 children being killed. I mean, it's horrible.
14 children.
And, you know, that's their safe place. They need to feel safe going to school. And, you know, kids see this on the TV, and they're afraid to go to school. That's sad.
No, I like to see who this criminal was. Because, like we said in New York, and there's a big meeting on Thursday morning, Judge Weinberg, and again, you're going to be calling me, going into my place. Tell us about the meeting.
The meeting is called by Mayor Adams under the auspices of the partnership with the City of New York. You're going to have 100, 150 of the biggest business leaders in the city there, trying to deal with this crime and lawlessness, this morass that we've entered into because we do not have effective public safety in the city. Mayor Adams is doing what he can. He has a recalcitrant state legislature, refuses to do the right thing. You have a governor who didn't push hard enough during the budget process to get a cleanup to all these anti-police, pro-criminal laws that keep coming out of the legislature. The legislature has become a dangerous place to protect the city and the state of New York.
This guy, Andrew Abdullah, the suspect in this subway shooting, I was just listening to the NYPD press conference a short. This is not a petty criminal. This is a violent criminal. We're talking about attempted murder in his past, which he only served 30 months for. He was sentenced, for 30 months. I think he only served 24. We're talking grand larceny.
If the state, listen, you gotta go on to Mr. Dershowitz, but if the state assembly and Mr. Hasty and Stuart Cousins from the state senate would put the violent criminals in jail, this would happen.
Absolutely. Professor Dershowitz, we've been talking about the crime wave that's basically sweeping across the country. President Biden also signed an executive order in the name of George Floyd, which we're questioning is that even possible, that he can do that? Welcome back to Cats at Night.
Well, thank you so much. You know, we have to adopt a neutral policy toward crime. It can't be politically correct. It can't be that we focus only on white racists that kill black people. We have to focus on all victims alike. More black people are killed by black people than by white racists. And we are unwilling to look at some of the racial elements in crime. And, you know, one doesn't want to paint with a broad brush. The vast majority of African Americans are law-abiding and are victims of crime and want to see the police giving more funds, not less funds. But you have the radicals, the AOCs of the world, who have taken over a wing of the Democratic Party and will not allow neutral principles to protect us from predatory criminals. And there are predatory criminals. How do I know? I've represented some of them for years. And I know that there are bad people out there, and there are good people who are victimized by them.
And just to let everybody know, the suspect in that Texas elementary school shooting is dead. They have confirmed that the suspect is also dead. We don't know exactly who he is. It's just such a tragedy. I mean, when we talk about crime, we're talking about the street crime as far as gun, but the
guaranteed it's not his first crime.
Well, there's also a mental illness component to this.
That's right. It's guns. We have to get the guns off the street and out of the hands of the criminals and the mentally ill. And before we went on the show, Craig Eaton, who just made that comment.
I want to say something, Craig Eaton. I think you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You know why? You'll never get the guns off the street. The criminals will always have guns.
But if we can reduce it, even 50%.
The criminals will always have. You know who does the killing? It's not the guns. It's the persons. If you get those people that have violent crimes, 3 or 4 or 5 violent crimes, at what point do you throw them in jail and say you're not supposed to live among civilized people? Governor McGreevey, you want to say something?
To go to, I think there's obviously, and Alan can speak to the different kinds of crimes in terms of street crimes, but when you look at this tragedy in Texas and you look at assault weapons, I think there's not only different types of crimes, whether it's the mentally ill, whether it's crimes of violence, but there's also crimes where, you know, where the AK-47 is employed that was never meant to be for this purpose. And so I think that's a rational place that...
Cocaine is against the law. Marijuana is against the law. Tell me one criminal doesn't have cocaine.
Well, you need to have a combination of factors. We need to try to get some guns out of the hands of gang members. When I lived in Boston, the African-American community leaders said, come into our community and take the guns away from the 17, 18, and 19-year-olds who are endangering our community. Yeah, even if you have to compromise with life, you've got to take those guns away. And Commissioner Broderick, who you remember, and others like that, came in and they took the guns away, and crime went down tremendously in the African-American community. We have to do a better job of predicting which criminals who are guilty of acts of violence will recidivate and keep them in for longer periods of time. We have to use every tool at our available. We have to teach our police to be better and arm them better and educate them better and fund them even more. This is what we have to do. We have to do it apolitically.
Alan, from the perspective of law enforcement, the beat cop in New York City, isn't there, and when you look at whether the UK, you look at New Zealand, you look at Australia, you look at Israel, isn't there an argument to be said that we need to get handguns to go to, isn't there an argument to be made that we have to reduce the amount of handguns as well, even to level the score?
Of course we have to reduce the number of handguns, and the Second Amendment doesn't say just the right to bear arms. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the freedom of a free state. Well-regulated. The Second Amendment wants guns to be well-regulated, the way they were well-regulated during the militias in 1792. And people have left out that part of the Second Amendment. Well-regulated. We have to regulate guns. We regulate driver's licenses more than we regulate gun licenses, and that's because of the gun lobby. And we, in Congress, people are afraid of the gun lobby. And so we now have the extremes on both sides. The gun lobby on one side and the extreme radical wokes on the other side that want to free everybody and want to have no bail pre-trial and want to defund the police. And the people in the middle, like all of us on this show and most of your listeners, are the ones getting squeezed.
Judge Weinberg? Alan, what's going to happen with that Supreme Court case testing the constitutionality of the New York State gun regulation law?
It's so interesting. I have a column about that coming out tomorrow in which I say, look, half the country thinks that the government, federal government, has no power, that state governments have no power whatsoever to regulate guns, and that's the position that's being taken in this case. And another half says that states have no power to regulate abortion. And the case is looking completely opposite directions. And I think the Supreme Court will decide that the state of New York doesn't have power over guns, but that the state of Alabama does have power to regulate. The decisions will be somewhat inconsistent in focus. They'll increase state power in the abortion context and decrease it in the gun context.
And what is, as a matter of real effect on the streets, Alan, what do you think is going to happen if that law is set aside?
Well, I think it will have a very, very bad impact. And I don't think the Supreme Court is thinking hard in the gun context about what impact its opinion is going to have. There are two kinds of rights. There are rights without victims. Gay marriage, there are no victims in gay marriage, no victims in interracial marriage. And then there are rights that have victims, and gun rights have victims. You might have a right to have a gun, but there's no free lunch. It's a zero-sum game. The more people have guns, the more people will get hurt by guns, particularly if the guns are made easily available to people who are either mentally ill or have criminal propensities.
These high-capacity guns, not all guns are the same. Can't there be some sort of more stricter regulations when we're talking about these AK-47s, these type of assaults?
There's an underground economy. Everybody can talk nicely, but there's an underground economy. Anything, you can have anything you want if you have dollars. Anything you want.
It costs more dollars. It costs more dollars, and that means there are fewer of them. If you make it illegal. In California, the state legislature said kids between the ages of 18 and 21 can't have AK-47. They can have others. They can have pistols. They can have hunting rifles. They can't have automatic or semi-automatic weapons. And a federal court struck that down.
Red light camera ahead.
Inconsistent with the Second Amendment, saying the state of California has no power to tell 18-year-old kids who are not mature that they can't have access to weapons of mass destruction, essentially. What an absurd decision.
So they need a license to drive a car, but they can walk in and buy an AK-47.
Yeah, they may need to show ID, but a kid who's 18 or 19, has a driver's license, can show ID and can get his gun, can buy magazines and go into a school and shoot her up, and that's what's going to happen more and more often.
Professor, we have a few more minutes. Let's go on to a different subject. What else do you want to talk about today?
Well, I want to talk about Princeton University, one of the great universities in the United States, who's just engaged in an act of blatant McCarthyism. They fired a tenured professor, a professor named Katz, who was teaching classes, one of the most popular teachers, about 15 years ago. Apparently he had an affair with a student. And he was punished. That was the end.
15 years ago?
Then he wrote an article last week.
Oh, hang on. Governor McDavid, can you give a pardon from 15 years ago?
15 years ago. Wait a minute, it's worse. Then he wrote an article critical of Princeton's approach to diversity, equality, and all of that stuff that's going on now, which he has the right to do. But as a result of that article, they went back and examined his private life, and the president of Princeton just fired him. The first time a tenured professor has been fired by a major university since in the 1970s. It's a private university that's a contract, and I think it could be a winning lawsuit if he can prove, and it was because of his speech that they went back and looked at his life, which sends a message to every professor: do not say anything controversial. Just agree with the politically correct statement, and you'll be fine. Nobody's going to look at your sex life. But if you start criticizing racial policies at the university, beware, they're going to uncover everything that happened in your life from the time you were 10 years old. It happened to, Justice Kavanaugh. The same thing. People didn't like his views on the merits, so they went back and found out that when he was 15 years old.
Red light camera ahead.
It's just outrageous.
Here in the helicopter.
People didn't like the politics of their back, and they checked the numbers of 15, 16, 17, 18, and they got you fired. I was just reading a couple of hours, and they were firing.
As you've been watching with us throughout our reporting this afternoon.
Is a few blocks from where the school is. He did tell me as of right now he was notified and was trying to find more information on Facebook. What he could tell me was he does believe the shooting happened in his daughter's classroom. That classroom is full of young children. He told me young 10-year-old children. He has not been able to confirm that information with school district officials. But he does know that some parents have got together and are sharing information through text and through Facebook posts. And he is very fearful that his daughter's classroom has been targeted by this shooter. David?
Just as you gravy real with the story of just one father trying to find his own child after word of this horrific shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Governor Abbott confirming those numbers. We reported earlier 14 children killed in this shooting. A teacher killed as well, and Governor Abbott adding to that, the suspect, he said, shot and killed his grandmother right before the shooting at that school. I want to bring in Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice Correspondent in Washington. And Pierre, as I mentioned just a moment ago, law enforcement presence growing by the minute there on the scene. And I know federal authorities have been watching this since first word.
David, they have been confirming the information that the government just recently spoke of. And David, I can tell you that there's growing concern that we are in the midst of a surge of these kinds of incidents. Just last week, as you and I were in Buffalo, an 18-year-old there accused of murdering all those black people. Now we have an 18-year-old in that community, believed to be a part of that community, killing so many young people and a teacher. Sources are, in fact, telling me about concern. They're trying to run down this information that he may have, in fact, killed his grandmother. They are doing a deep dive on social media posts by this young man to glean what he was thinking, what he was writing, what he was posting in recent days. This is a full court tilt right now to make sure no one else has knowledge. There are some additional people that they have some questions about.
David Thomas tracking this in Washington. We are set to hear from authorities there on the ground in Uvalde. Their first time before the cameras addressing what's played out this afternoon. Let's listen.
Good afternoon. As she mentioned, I want to make a statement. This will give you questions. We'll give you a time when we'll be addressing the facility. At approximately 11:32 a.m. this morning, there was a mass casualty incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The school has children that are in second, third, and fourth grade. I can confirm right now that we have several injuries, adults and students, and we do have some deaths. The suspect is deceased at this point. DPS assisting with the investigation. And at this point, the investigation is leading to tell us that the suspect did act alone during this heinous crime. So we notified and we're providing services to them as the district should. As far as the rest of the district is concerned, safety measures were taken to make sure that we had a safe release for the rest of the district, for our city of Uvalde. And we had numerous law enforcement officers and agencies that assisted with the safe release for the students. We do want to keep all their families in their prayers as well. And we also want to respect the privacy of the family. And it's still being worked on. And again, we'll notify the parents and the families as soon as we have some news for them. Thank you so much.
We greatly appreciate your understanding and patience with us. Please know at this time, we are only making a statement. We will be releasing more information as the investigation continues. We appreciate your courtesy. At this time, it concludes our press conference. Thank you.
All right, authorities there on the ground beginning to offer more of what they're not to actually give any numbers, though the governor has provided those numbers, at least what we know so far. Again, you heard authorities there say this started playing out 11:32 a.m. Texas time in Uvalde. Of course, we know that is now about 80 miles outside of San Antonio, inside an elementary school. Authorities there saying students there are in the second, third, and fourth grades, though they didn't say exactly which classroom or classrooms were targeted by this suspect. They did confirm what we believed already, that the suspect is deceased. They assured the community that the suspect acted alone, that they do not believe anyone else is involved in this awful, heinous crime this afternoon. Families are being notified, which we know is the painful task that follows every single one of these shootings in this country, and that familiar request of the community and of the nation for authorities there to keep the families in our prayers. Extraordinary scene playing out in Texas, in Uvalde, Texas, late today, as we begin to get a clearer portrait of just the toll of the death at that school. And these were children, 14 children, a teacher, all killed. Governor Abbott confirming the grandmother of the suspect was shot and killed before the shooting that played out at the school. Unclear exactly when or how that played out, but obviously the suspect being tied to that as well. Let's bring in our senior investigative reporter Aaron Kotursky. Aaron, what more do we know about the suspect at this hour? I know the governor was very careful when talking about the shooting of the grandmother.
The shooter entered Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. He shot his grandmother. according to multiple law enforcement sources. The gunfire then continued inside the elementary school, where the governor said 14 elementary school students were shot and killed, along with a teacher.
A number at the grocery store 9 days ago, Laguna Woods, California. The man who walked into the church there. And now we're at the scene of a school shooting, where we have now learned of 14 children and a teacher have been killed.
That's right, and unfortunately we expect that we will see more of this. All of the federal government law enforcement agencies have been warning that we're in a heightened threat environment that is inspired not only by ideological violent extremism like what we saw in Buffalo and in California last week, but also just a mix of grievances and anger and people just not mentally well right now, and I don't mean a defined mental illness. I just mean it's been a very difficult 2 years on all of us in society, and we're not doing well in how we treat one another, and particularly for adolescents, we've seen statistic after statistic of COVID being particularly difficult for teens. Increases in mental health concerns, increases in depression, increases in suicide, domestic violence across the just dealing with a massive epidemic of consequences coming from a very difficult 2 years. And unfortunately, one of the ways in which this seems to manifest is through these targeted...
You believe that the mental toll of that pandemic and all of the other factors at play in this country are weighing even more heavily on a problem that was already long established in this country.
That's right, and unfortunately, we have not done a great job of preparing for this reintegration, for reopening, for helping kids, teenagers to deal with the stress. We know from studying people that commit attacks like this that there are a series of indicators or risk factors that occur in the immediate months to a couple of years prior to somebody committing an attack, and some of those stressors include drastic changes in lifestyle, loss of job, loss of a loved one, loss of the way in which you're used to carrying out life, which of course for all of us during COVID, we had that massive disruption, a massive loss, and for some that loss was people, but for others it just was the way in which you're used to carrying out your life and engaging with people. Social isolation is another risk factor. So all of those things on top of, we're already a country that has a horrible series of years of violence, both in schools and in other mass attacks in public spaces. So it's not that it's just COVID, but COVID on top of this epidemic of gun violence in our country is creating the perfect storm for these types of attacks to start to almost snowball. And the concern we have, of course, is every time there's an attack, we worry about copycats, we worry about further inspiration, even if it's not necessarily for the same grievance or ideology. Just the mere fact that an attack occurs and it gets attention can be the trigger that causes somebody to decide, well, today's the day I'm going to take that action I've been thinking about and go and kill somebody. So it's just a very dangerous and heightened threat period right now. And if we can encourage the viewers, if there is a loved one or somebody and you have concerns, please say something. Please talk to them. And if you can, try to get them help through a mental health professional. And if they're unwilling to engage with you, call law enforcement. You might be able to see the one indicator that somebody's about to commit an act of violence. And you might be now, we're just in a very precarious environment. We need everybody to look out for one another.
Elizabeth Newman from the Department of Homeland Security and the Trump administration with us here this afternoon. Elizabeth, thank you. I think your points are all very well made, urging the American people, laying out in America to think about loved ones, their neighbors, and if anyone is in need of help getting through what is an extraordinarily heavy time in this country. Please help them seek help, and certainly if you're concerned, reach out to authorities. I want to talk about that statement just coming in from the White House. The press secretary saying President Biden has been briefed on the horrific news of this elementary school shooting in Texas. Obviously, will continue to be briefed. His prayers are with the families impacted by this awful event, and he will speak this evening when he arrives back at the White House. Obviously, after his overseas trip then from Parisian here, the White House press secretary moments ago, a statement from the president. I want to bring in Brad Garrett, a longtime ABC News consultant. Brad, you and I have been on the air with so many of these awful shootings, and now that we've learned a little more about the suspect, it helps to begin to put the pieces together of what is, in some cases, sort of a familiar pattern that we see in some of these cases, a family member or a loved one targeted before then a location somewhere in the community targeted next.
So I think what that tells you, David, that this guy just wanted to go on a rampage and annihilate people that were close or were important in his life. So we don't know the relationship, obviously, with the grandmother, but there's something there. So from there, he goes to the school. Again, we don't know the connection to the school, but it did represent something to him. And if he knew anything about this school, and the reason you have so many casualties is a small classroom. If you break into a classroom, a teacher, a dozen or so students, maybe more in a classroom, the idea that you could sadly shoot everyone in there in just a few seconds is a sad reality, and he probably knew that. He also knew that he was not going to leave that school. Either law enforcement was going to kill him or he was going to kill himself, because that's sort of part of the reality when you start with killing a loved one before you go to the school. That's exactly what Adam Lanza did in Newtown at Sandy Hook. We've seen it in other mass shootings. It doesn't change the reality. It may perhaps change the mindset. But to sort of expand a little bit what Elizabeth was talking about, we really need to do a much better job of getting people. What was the relationship between the staff and the students at the high school where this kid apparently attended? There'll be pieces of information about what this kid was going to do. He apparently was all over social media, from what I can briefly gather. Don't know the specifics. There'll be pieces of information. He may even have videos of himself. Who saw them? Could they have reported them? So this boils down to relationships. Relationships of students, teachers, unfulfilled, some trust in the community, or inside a school, or inside a factory. How many times have we talked about these shootings being at a place of employment where people will talk and they'll tell you things they're hearing or seeing. It may not be accurate, but you've got to follow it.
Okay, let me get it done.
We're not going to do anything, in my professional and personal view, about firearms. It just sort of, that's what we're doing. And nobody really wants us to change that law. And so if you're not going to do anything about that, then you have to do something about our relationships and our ability to bring information forward so we can get in front of these shooters. We do it occasionally, but unfortunately, like Buffalo, like today, we're talking about something after the fact, which we never, ever want to do.
Brad Garrett with us here this afternoon as we just begin to watch this case, the pieces of this very early still come together. Brad, thank you for what has become a familiar pattern. A young person in a community, this time a young man, 18 years old, believed to be a student at Uvalde, the high school there. Whether or not he was still in class or not remains an unanswered question at this hour, but authorities say he did shoot and kill his grandmother before then going to the Robb Elementary School, where he then shot and killed 14 children and a teacher there as well. I want to bring in Isaias Melendez, an eyewitness at the scene. And Isaias, first of all, I'm sorry that you have to join us under such horrific circumstances. Can you tell us what you saw, what you heard, and where you were?
Who having a birthday? Somebody having a birthday today? Somebody having a birthday today? Ta-da! Careful. Okay, it's want to open for you? Yeah. You can open. Why not? You didn't bring the water today? Where is it?
I leave it at this one.
Oh, really? We're gonna buy a solution also. Ta-da! This is cool, huh? We're gonna buy a solution. This is cool, huh?
That's mine.
Ta-da! You had a good day in school today? Time to go home. Home sweet home. Wanna pick up mama or go straight home? Leave mama alone? No pick up mama.
Shots because we do live in the same area as the school. And I said no. And as we were on the phone, we could just hear more gunshots. And then she walked outside, got in the car to go see what was going on because told to step back. I mean, we didn't know what was going on. We were just told to step back. And I mean, as a parent, I guess it doesn't matter. You're going to put your life in jeopardy for your kid.
Isaias Melendez, we really do appreciate your observations on such a horrific day in your community, and I'm sorry for you having to live through and witness what you saw there this afternoon. But you've been listening here to ABC News Live coverage. The witness there talking about watching parents run to the school, trying to find out anything they could about their own children, their own. Isaias also described the gunshots that he could still hear once he arrived at that school, and also the children running from the school, from the other classrooms, to safety. All of this as he was standing there watching this play out. I want to bring in Maria Villarreal, who's already on the scene. She was telling us earlier about the father who had not heard about his own child. I'm curious if we know anything more about him. And Maria, you've also learned about the general age range of some of the victims this afternoon.
Yeah, David. So as we were walking right up to the school, as you can see, it's right behind me. We've spoken with several family members, several parents, each one of them telling us that the child they cannot find at the Civic Center, where evacuations were happening, at the hospitals nearby, and in San Antonio. The children's ages that are still missing are 10 years old, which puts them right around 4th grade. Now again, school district officials are not releasing a whole lot of information at this time, but this is information we are getting directly from parents. These are parents we saw running to the school to try and find their kid. The funeral home was. That funeral home is about 4 blocks away from us down this street. As you can see, there is a heavy, heavy law enforcement presence here right now. We have a Department of Troopers, DPS here on site, local law enforcement as well, Border Patrol agents. And for those of you that might be wondering why there might be a heavy Border Patrol agent presence, that's because we're not too far from the border. I've spoken with the mayor's office as well, He tells us right now this is a very flexible and fluid situation. But one thing he could tell us was this is a community that is very strong, very connected, a community of farmers and ranchers, and this is a very devastating situation for them. I mean, this town has less than 20,000 people in it. So this is an extremely, extremely difficult situation for them. A lot of these family members are lingering right behind us. They are waiting to hear any information they can from not just law enforcement, but even school district officials. Just about a minute or two ago, we did see FBI SWAT vehicles go right through here. Larger vehicles than what we are normally used to see. A lot of times when these vehicles come on site, it is for two reasons. One, to try and check the location for any sort of explosive devices that may have been taken on by the suspect. That is not the case in this situation. These vehicles look like vehicles that will be used to try and take victims out of the school. Again, David, we're very cautious in the information that we're releasing right now because, as we heard just a bit ago, both the governor, law enforcement, and school district officials are being very limited in what they're telling us, and that is because they want to make sure they get in contact with all of the parents before giving us that info. David?
Maria Villarreal, we appreciate your reporting, and we know as a mom yourself, it's not easy arriving at the scene of these awful, awful shootings and having to interact with family members, just as you simply report out the story and the pain that you describe from that father. We could all feel in your description. So, Maria, we'll come back to you. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lee Waldman is with KSAT, our ABC station that covers that region. And Lee, thank you as well for joining us this afternoon. And what more can you tell us about, obviously, a very early investigation at this point?
We just got out of the Civic Center that's behind me. This was initially just a reunification center. Parents were told that their students were evacuated into the center here and were told to wait until all the students were accounted for and then they could be picked up here. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now here at the Civic Center is there's families that are getting some of the worst news of their life, and you'll see families passing behind me, even coming this other way as they're going inside to learn more about this tragedy that happened here. We did just get a briefing from the Uvalde Police Department from Pete Arredondo. He's the police chief here, and he couldn't give us a whole lot of information.
What the heck?
Actually coming from Governor Greg Abbott, but he said this is a school filled with
poor bicycle, he got all the bubble.
They confirmed there were deaths, they confirmed there were injuries, and they said they were working on
The bicycle got all the bubble in his
a
face.
lot of what's happening in a lot of these buildings in the Civic Center.
He
Here
left.
behind us, we see families
Ta-da.
holding on to each other and crying because
He giving a cow.
they never anticipated they would get after dropping off their children.
Well, thank you, everybody.
They fully anticipated bringing them back
Get the electric bike. Electric bike is good.
this point was passed.
Ta-da.
She anticipated coming home from work today, and that's not going to happen because
You
of
don't
the
like
act
it?
of just
But
one
thank you,
person.
everybody.
So here we know that there's going to be an additional press conference happening soon where we're able to ask some questions, get additional details about what happened at the school today. We know that the shooting started. The first call came in around 11:32 this morning. We're hearing that the shooter was involved in maybe possibly killing his grandmother before he went to this elementary school. There's still a lot of law enforcement in this area, so we're just waiting for that additional press conference where we're able to ask questions to school officials and also to law enforcement.
Maybe you can get a donut or you have donuts in the house.
Step inside that civic center as families just
Bubble.
hold on to each other and try to hold themselves together after something like this.
See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Peace and love.
And Lee, we really do appreciate your reporting right outside the Civic Center there in Uvalde. Lee, thank you. Lee, reporting on the pain from parents who arrived at that center to get the horrific news, whether or not their child had survived this. And she said that was the place where they were informing parents of the 14 children who were shot.
Ta-da.
Beginning late morning Texas time, 11:32 there in Uvalde, Texas.
the
The first
tax?
call came in. The suspect
Give
again
everybody
was
give a
being
cow
billed as
to the
18-year-old
bubbles.
South Florida Ramos.
So many bubbles.
Attending high school there. Now, clear whether or not he was still a student, but in fact is involved as a student, or whether he was attending class. That's a question.
It's raining. I need to get my umbrella.
That he shot and killed at some point this morning before heading to that school.
I need to get my umbrella.
Inside the school, again unclear whether it was
It's raining bubbles. Raining bubbles.
just for anecdotes from parents who arrived there. Again, no
It's
names.
a raining day. Hallelujah.
But anecdotally, telling us that the parents are looking for their loved ones, looking for their children.
Careful,
right there
careful.
on the scene, which just
It's a raining day.
Again, in America, 14 children shot and killed inside the Rock Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, late this morning, including a teacher as well, shot and killed, the grandmother shot and killed at some point before this mass shooting began to play out in Texas.
It's a raining day.
It's been a horrific couple of weeks at this point when it comes to mass shootings. 10 days ago, we were standing in Buffalo, at a grocery store. 9 days ago, our team in California at that church where we got
Yeah, you give me a lot of powers. I see, that's crazy.
One at a time, many questions ahead, and we are thinking
That's
as
crazy what you
pastors
do.
to the families in that community. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com.
It's all
Even when
clean.
authorities come before the cameras with additional
You're
details.
doing a good job.
That's playing out there in Texas. We'll be right back on the air. Our entire team will be here for World News Tonight, and for many of you, we return you to your local news now. Until then, good day. This is a special from ABC News. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn
Ta-da!
places. ABC News World News Tonight with David Moore, America's
Okay. Show me how you do it. Show me, let me see. Let me see. Show me the bubble. Yeah, show. Let me see. Let me see the bubble gun. Can I see it again? Aya, show me. Let me see the bubble gun. Show me. Can you do it? That's Aya bubble gun. Show me. We need to buy more soap. Okay. See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Peace and love. I'm in the mirror. See you tomorrow. Peace and love. Peace and love.